Okay, so next we'll be breaking down, or we'll be practicing plank pose. We just saw this pose when we practice Surya Namaskar A, or sun salutation, full sun salutation version A. So sometimes this pose might be practiced on its own. And many times, as within many other poses, it may also be used as a transitional pose, or you may just pause in the pose for a few breaths before you move on to something else. So we're going to practice this pose and kind of talk about the do's and don'ts of it. And when you're practicing this pose, if you feel that the wrists are in a little bit of pain, or it's hard to hold yourself up, it may just be the strength in the wrists and the fact that you may not be used to having the wrists in this position and that much body weight on it. So that's okay. So of course, always listen to yourself. Don't push past any pain or major discomfort. But if it just feels like it's a weakness issue, practice the pose for a breath or two, and then pause for a breath or two, and you can just go back and forth in practicing the pose. So let's come into plank pose. So you can join me and watch me at the same time. So let's say I was just coming from a kneeling position or a sitting position. I would lean forward. I would plant my hands down, so shoulder distance apart. Remember, we like to stack our bones. So I would plant my hands down, shoulder distance apart, and I would like to get to a place where my shoulders are directly over my wrists. So I'm planting my palms down nice and strong. I'm spreading my fingers wide. And then extend both legs back. So now I'm pressing into the balls of my feet. So the main thing with this plank pose is we want the entire body and the spine to be in one long line. So we don't want to sink the hips down really deep, sagging in the lower back, and we don't want our bottom up too high. We're getting closer here to a down dog. So we want to be somewhere in the middle. And while you're here, the strength is going to come from your abdominals, not just your arms and your shoulders. So pulling your navel in for strength, extending those heels back, and pressing the ground away. So one of the main things, I'm going to rest my knees down while I talk. And while you're practicing this pose, you can also move in and out of having the knees up in plank pose or resting one or two knees down. So one of the main things we want to do in this plank pose is actively press the ground away, almost like you're rounding out and hollowing out your back. So what we don't want to do is sink the chest down as if we're sinking our chest and the shoulder blades are squeezing together. So go ahead and take a moment, maybe with your knees down or with the knees up, and see what that's like, sinking down in between the shoulders as opposed to pressing the ground away. So do it a few times. Try sinking down through the shoulders and try pressing the ground away. Good. So then if the knees were down, press back up and feel yourself. So the palms are planted down strong. Fingers are spread wide. We're pressing the ground away. We're pulling the navel in, and the heels extend back behind us. So nice and strong here. Take 3 more breaths. Good. And then slowly lower your knees down and give yourself a little break. So just sit back into child's pose. Good, and then press back up out of your child's pose, either sitting back on your heels or finding a comfortable seat. And allow your eyes to close. And notice how the body feels. So scan through the body, notice where you feel electricity, energy, warmth. And that way, when we check in after a pose, we can see, okay, what was happening? What part of the body was I working, or what part of the body was I energizing? So personally, I can feel it right here in my upper arms, the front of my arms, the back, and the triceps, and I definitely feel it in my abdominals as well. So go ahead and on your own, practice this pose. You can practice resting the knees down on the ground, pressing up for a couple of breaths. Go back and forth. And remember, the main thing is we don't want to squeeze into the shoulder blades, kind of arch the back. We want almost like the upper back is really rounding and we're really pressing the ground away. And additionally, remember, we want to stack our shoulders directly over our wrists. And again, you don't have to practice for too long. And after you're done, if you're feeling a lot of things in your wrists, go ahead and give those wrists a break. So stretch into the fingers, circle into the wrists, wiggle them out, maybe shake them out a little bit. And just practice maybe a few minutes a day of this plank pose until you feel like you kind of start to get the hang of it and it's a more comfortable pose for you.